Now I'm just a stats graduate, you know?
That's true. But I mean, honestly, Andre, how much math have you really applied outside of school? Can you really give me like a percentage?
A lot. A lot.
Okay. I have it used exactly like 50%.
Honestly, I've delved into real estate quite a bit.
Oh, that's true. The most math I've ever used.
I had a financial consulting job before this.
The most math. That's really cool, by the way. I would love to go in consulting one day. But the most math I've ever used outside of school was actually in StarCraft when they give things like numbers percentage, like 40.1 minerals per minute for SCV's mind or something like that. But the only number that you're concerned about is Select is going for his 6th win overall and pretty much going to try to establish himself as the king of North America in terms of the King of the Hill series.
And tie himself.
That's right.
Tie himself with the #1 winner.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, North America doesn't have... The second closest would be TT1 at 300, which is still very respectable. But at the same time, Select's the one currently on top, who is the Blue Terran in the top right corner from Team Dignitas.
And it looks like he is going for a 1 Rax expansion. This is sort of the standard that we've been seeing lately. 1 Rax expansion into some sort of Hellion build, whether it be Hellion Banshee, Hellion Marine, some sort of Hellion.
Hellions and just go for a massive run by. Like some Terrans are actually reverting back to huge run by attempts because even though you have 4 queens will be can't really stop 20 Hellions coming by, and then you just kill everything. If you saw TSO4 when who am I thinking of, did it to Dark Force and just completely destroyed Dark Force. He just ran by with 16 Hellions, and he had a Spine Crawler, he had 2 queens up, and everything was good defense-wise, but he just still lost every drone, and it was quite disgusting, actually.
Yeah, it's still a very prominent build, I think. On ladder, at least, I see it a ton. But for some reason, well, I know for good reason, I mean, Zergs have kind of started to, I guess, defend against it with SimCity a lot better. But because there's just these different builds, like Cloak Banshee coming into the fray, they kind of forget about that. And that's why you see always this circulation of different types of builds. And it's going to come up a lot in StarCraft. You're going to see this rotation where, those Colossus pushes come back. Obviously, they're back right now. We call it the Squirtle push, but that used to be alive. I remember Kiwi Kaki always doing that on ladder.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And that was one of the most powerful things, and now it's been reverted back to the Squirtle push. But I remember specifically, I was like, wow, Kiwi Kaki, you're so smart. All you do is you make Stalkers and 3 Colossus, and you push from there. And this is just examples of how circulation of builds is very prevalent in StarCraft.
Absolutely. Now, the build that Select is going to go for once again is a really quick 3rd command center. Now, he's placing this on the outskirts of his base, so it makes me think that he kind of wants Glon to see it in a sense, because sometimes Terrans tuck it away just above their natural. But what do you think about this positioning of the 3rd command center? Do you think Select's really trying to reveal it to Glon?
I'm not sure. It is a really interesting positioning. I think sometimes people think, as a Terran, hey, Overlords are normally in this right-hand side. Let's not hide it over there. Yeah. No Zerg would actually expect a command center to be built like right in front of them. Yeah. But of course, if there is an Overlord right there, you're building it right in front of them, Select.
That's actually really curious, but that's just a stylistic thing. You can see Select is really trying to patrol his... Yeah, actually, I think you're right. He has a Marine patrolling both sides of his main.
It's similar to how the Hobbits went to go hide closer to Isengard rather than going away from it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm just...
In Lord of the Rings?
It is Lord of the Rings, and...
Merry and Pippin.
Yes, that's right. That's where they least expect them.
But really, they were...
I'm trying to fast forward through the 12 hours of Lord of the Rings and trying to see which scene you're talking about. And I'm still in the Fellowship of the Ring when they're hid behind that huge tree from the NASL riders, right?
It's right when... Well, I'm letting the camera explain the story real quick. It's right when... They're like, oh, we're going to go home. The Ents are like, no, we're not going to participate in your war.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're like, oh, yeah, let's go close to there. And they're like, oh, these were my friends.
Oh. I remember, Andre. Don't worry.
Okay, cool.
But I also remember that Glon's just been playing phenomenal, because we're talking a lot about Select, but Glon's been playing just pretty solid Zerg in general. That's why he got really far. He was a runner-up in the NSQ #1, which was last week. NSQ #2, NSQ, of course, is next season qualifier for NASL Season 4. We're running later this week, which Glon will be trying once again. And I mean, honestly, Glon has been working really hard. In fact, he qualified, I believe, for IPL 5 through the North American Satellite Tournament, which was a really big accomplishment. So he's just been on a tear and up and rising.
Definitely showing his worth. And I'm looking forward to Glon because coming second into to Bishu, who would have thought those two at the finals with all the powerhouse Koreans, it really is a testament to Glon and Bishu's skill. And I really think we're going to be seeing a lot of good things coming out from this player over here, Glon. But that being said, just very standard play in TVZ, this current age, you have this, where Zergs basically get their 3 base uninhibited, maybe a little bit of harass here and there, and really the game starts 2.5 bases for Terran against the 3 bases of Zerg.
Yeah, it really depends whether or not Glon chooses to pressure this third, but that's the whole idea of going for Banshees early on, just so you can control the map and at least see if something's coming and at least add in some DPS, hopefully, by the time the units even get to your base. Now, Select will move out with his orbital command, but he's also going for double engineering bait. This is also another thing that Terrans have been doing a lot, starting your upgrades a lot earlier, but trying to play really greedy because Zergs have been going for double Evo Chamber, trying to go for mass even fast hive to get really quick upgrades on all their Zerglings, but we're seeing that Terrans have been responding with even more greed and trying to control the map. And interestingly enough, though, a lot of Terrans have been kind of mixed on their opinions on whether or not they should get Cloak on their Banshees. How effective is it? And Andre, we've had this discussion a lot, so why don't we talk a little bit as Select is moving out, trying to control more of the map.
Cloak is definitely, I think, one of the best upgrades, but it is really, really important to look at that counter at the bottom left-hand corner. If you're seeing, obviously, this like 11, 12 minutes into the game, it doesn't make sense to get Cloak Banshee. I think it's going to be very, very dependent on whatever time it is. I think around 8 to 9 minutes, yes, always get it. But after 9 minutes, I actually think that Select is not going to get a lot of profits out of these two Banshees. I really feel like this is so late into the game that the ability to get queens is so easy. Not only that, the drone saturation is so huge. So you're really not doing anything to your opponent. But, you know, if you kill, let's say, 5 drones right now, income tab, that is 5 out of 76 harvesters. Does that really make a huge difference and dent the economy as opposed to, let's say, if it was 50 drones? That's 10% right there.
Well, I mean, the big thing is that Select knows he's not going to try to force anything. There was 3 queens in the main with an Overseer, as well as a couple spores that were in production. So Select, instead, just going to snipe some of these creep tumors, but there's just an incredible amount of tumors spread all over Glon's side of the map. And now Glon is pushing out a couple of Mutalisks, which means that these Banshees are ill-fated. The Overseer pretty much can follow them very easily and deal with the rest of these units accordingly.
First unit actually gets picked off, a drone just wandering over, but as you said, the mutas are inbound, so we're going to see a pretty big GG coming out from these Banshees pretty soon. Just the Banshees, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah,
well, that'd be so silly just to GG as soon as you lose those Banshees. But you can see that Glon is also pretty much just still joining up very comfortably, going to be in the mid-80s by now. Now, at the same time, Select has pretty much transitioned to just a Marine tank army. This is pretty much the core. And what I actually like about what Select did is that he didn't necessarily felt the need to rush to Hellions as well. Hellions, despite how effective they can be, as this last Banshee barely gets away, the Hellions do delay your mid-game ability to get production out, because every 2 Hellions is basically another barracks and a Marine that you can add on and pretty much push out more units. You can see at this point, supply-wise, Select is pretty healthy. He's got a huge amount of Marines, and he's got pretty good upgrades going as well. So if you want to line up a 2-2 timing, he kind of can, because he has a huge amount of army.
He definitely has that 2-2 timing push that we always talk about. The 2-2 timing push, a lot of people actually get it confused. It's not actually to get an advantage over your opponent. It's to say I at least have equality. You know, so my opponent normally should have upgrades faster than me. The Zergs should normally have upgrades faster than Terrans. With getting the 2-2, you say, well, my opponent cannot have 3-3. 3-3 is just too long of an upgrade. From there, it's just mass supply against mass supply. And normally, Terran units are a lot more efficient than Zerg units.
Yeah, and at that point, with 2-2, it's very hard for Zerg to have any sort of strong hive-based army, so you can hit at a very nice, comfortable cushion where Zerg is kind of like in the middle of transitioning all their gas to a better army, but then you force them to commit some of it to like Banelings or whatever you want to force out of Zerg. At this point, Select is pushing out. 2-2 is finished, and Select is preparing a fourth base. Oh, his Mules are flying straight over the Marines, and that is not what Glon needs at this point. He's got a lot of Banelings in production and more Zerglings, but he doesn't even have Baneling speed. This is a perfect time for Select to move out.
Oh, yes, and look at the positioning of those siege tanks. It's beautiful to watch. He's just poking up into the fourth base right now. Is Glon going to commit to this? When is he going to go? He needs to go immediately because there's just too much damage being done all over the place. This fourth base, if it goes down, that's a giant advantage for Select. That's basically the game win.
Well, because it's 8 gases that will be for Glon for his hive tech. Glon, he's not going to defend his fourth. He's setting up a huge flank. The Banelings and Zergs are coming in, but Bane speed still isn't finished. The Mule is also going for the flank on the front, and the Zerglings and Banes are trying to engage their huge Marine tank army, and lots of explosions in the end. A huge pack of Marines do survive, and Glon has to eject, but at least he dealt with a huge amount of tanks.
Beautifully done, but there's still more reinforcements for Select. And the fact of the matter is, Glon losing this fourth base and not cleaning up everything in decisive manner means he has to stay on Zergling Baneling Muta, which is a very inefficient composition at the late game stages. There's just too much. The medevac gets up, the medevac count gets up, the siege tank count gets up, and you can obviously progress into better units from there. So Select has a dominating advantage in this game. He can just stay in the middle of the map and keep threatening this fourth base, or the emerging fourth base, and he's good to go.
And, you know, Glon, of course, has been keeping up a lot of his gas so he can have a huge hive tech army, but he doesn't really have anything to really pull towards because he has a lot of larvae committed to Zerglings to really defend against it, while Select's been playing very well with his macro. I mean, he's been staying at a high amount of minerals, but that's only because he's maxed. He's already at this point where he just has way too much, and you can see that he's just going to constantly threaten to push out, even though his fourth base is really the point of contention. He wants to secure this so he can constantly reinforce.
Yeah, and the trick here to actually give yourself a lot of options. A lot of Terrans are like, well, what do I do from here? I don't really want to trade because it's still a little bit scary. Zergling Baneling is so strong. Well, you still want to trade because whatever it is, you're building more than your opponent. Use that. Make it so that you trade. You have the least amount of units on the field, and then all of a sudden, bam, you have these 2 medevacs on the bottom here that can actually do a ton of damage. Now, I love what we're seeing here. Select is going to show these medevacs. It's going to force a reaction. Do you actually defend against these medevacs, or are you going to defend against this impending attack in the middle of the map? At least the fourth base is going to go down here, but it forces Glon to make a move.
Yeah, and he's going to try to move in with his Infestors and drop a bunch of Missing Terrans. Oh, look at the Q up as well. You're going to drop it into the tank line while the Zerglings flank. Select is also dropping the main, doing massive damage to the economy and the heart of all of Glon's tech, but Glon is pretty much focused on this army, the huge stim and fallback from Select, and he's going to lose all of his tanks pretty much, but the fact is he still has an incredible amount of macro behind it. GG, Glon has no follow-up, and just like that, Select has launched himself to tie Bling for the most wins in the NASL Gauntlet.
Beautifully played by Select. Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. Yep. Obviously, the 3 base against 2.5 base Terran is one of the major problems, I think, that Terrans are having. And Select just showing you can standardly macro, get a lot of units, and just rely on normal army engagements to actually win the game against Zergs on Daybreak of all maps. One thing I want to be critical on, if I do, against Glon is the fact that he made the fourth base in that middle location. I don't think you actually need to do that. You can actually put it in the top left-hand location, and then you force counterattacks a lot better. But from there, it's a really awkward position because you have to defend that middle ground, and then you attack into or up a ramp.
Yeah, that's where that ramp is just really difficult.
That's where it actually makes a lot of problems because of that.
Yeah, that's pretty much a good summary of what happened. Select able to really control the lanes well and force really nice timings, even though Select's been playing more passive. And I'm really proud of Select, honestly. The fact that he's able to play such great, solid macro games without showing a lot of falter. And at this point, people can't say Select is that cheesy Terran player anymore. He's playing very well.
You know, I think it was NASL Season 2. There was a game where Select went up against Alive. Select killed 48 SCVs. 48 SCVs, and they were even in the count.
Yeah. That was season 3 on Shattered Temple.
3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, and it was like a phenomenal, like low eco TVT that we're not used to seeing. It was like one base versus one base for a long time.
Select, please macro, please, man, you can do this.
But 4 months later, Select is now 6 wins and $450 total. That's really good stuff, guys. We'll take a quick commercial break. We'll see who is next to face Select and potentially take the gauntlet away from him, or will Select just pretty much be unstoppable for us tonight? We'll find out after a quick commercial. Don't go anywhere. This is the NASL King of the Hills series. BRB.
Be right back.